Andy joins us this morning on the Harbor One hotline. Hey, Bradfo.
Oh, it's like 2 o'clock in the morning here in Anaheim, if I'm doing my math correctly. So yes,
gotta love you getting up and doing this at 2 a.m. You're a good guy, Bradfo.
I am McFarland coursing through my veins. Speaking of which,
hold on. I don't want to, when it comes to women especially who are driving to work, I don't want to cause any accidents, but are you reclining in bed right now as you do this?
I just sat up.
Okay.
Bradford got to get his math right, unless he's in Hawaii.
Here's an update. I just sat up in bed, so there you go. You're welcome, ladies.
Is Joe Kelly awake?
Courtney, I know that the adrenaline's coursing through your veins from the Taylor Swift concert. So you, please, you be the one that yell McFarland this morning, please.
McFarland!
I love it.
Thank you.
Added a D on the end of it, but that's okay.
Oh, shoot.
That's all right.
Yeah. Added my own little spice.
So listen, Bradfo, we were talking about Chris Sale earlier. And is it too early? I don't think it is, but he's 3-0 in his last 4 starts. That includes the 7 innings on Saturday night, and he struck out 8. Is it possible that he is indeed the ace that this team needs?
I told you that a couple of weeks ago. Let's go. I mean, when is Chris Curtis going to admit this is the best contract in the history of Boston?
Rob, I know it's early out there, but I have this hot take, really hot. Trade him today.
Oh, I like that. I don't think that they're going to, or it's a good idea, but I like that you have that take.
Thanks, Rob. Appreciate
it. I like you personally.
You're a great man.
But because they need, this is what they needed all along. We said this at the beginning of the year. They need to start defining guys who you knew that you could rely on, that you knew what you had, and that was really what the issue with this team. We didn't know exactly who was going to step up and be that certainty because they had let those guys go. And now you've landed with Chris Sale as the ace of the team. And I think it's 3 or 4 starts now where he's been that guy. He's been the old Chris Sale. So I think that at this point, and maybe I'm wrong, but at this point, I would go on the limb and say, you got the guy that you needed at the top of the rotation. If you're starting a playoff game today, Chris Sale is starting that game.
So speaking of the rotation, with Whitlock and Crawford both about to come off of the IL, what in your mind, what does the 5-man rotation end up looking like?
Well, they have to figure out what they have to do with Corey Kluber because you cannot take Tanner Houck out of the starting rotation. He showed last night that he is definitely part of the solution, not part of the problem. They don't necessarily need him in the bullpen like they need that guy that we saw last night in the starting rotation. So I just think you have to figure out what you're going to do with Corey Kluber. That's not an easy one. You've invested in the guy. Usually what you try to do at this point in the year, you try to ride him out. You see what you have. But unless the only other options is you send Brian Bayo down, you send Tanner Houck to the bullpen, and neither one of those I don't think A is realistic and B is what's best for the team right now.
Well, it seems like Bayo should be set in that. It should be Sale and Paxton and Bayo are at least set, don't you think?
Yeah, and these are 5 guys: Sale, Paxton, Bayo, Whitlock. They're going to give every chance to be a starter, and Tanner Houck is really, really good. You show what you did last night in the shadows of Disneyland, which, by the way, I still have never been to. Might be on the docket today. I don't know.
No,
but
you can't go. You cannot go by yourself.
Yeah,
don't be one of those adult Disney people.
Are you kidding me? I'm the guy who went to the water park in Dallas by himself.
Oh God!
I told you there. It was one of my greatest regrets in life. Is that it was 110 degrees, and I said, you know what's a good idea? Paying $100 to go in the lazy river by myself. And then that was ill-advised. and it was really, really sad. And I may have mentioned this to you before. I don't know what your feeling is that you never felt older or fatter than when you're at the top of a water slide, ready to go down, and you sink down, and you have the college kid, the lifeguard, looking down at you and said, "Hey, can I get a push-up over the edge here?" That is the worst.
Yeah, it is an issue. It really is.
And the mother's like, stay away from the creepy old guy handing out baseball cards on the water slide.
Every girl you pass on the lazy river, you're like, "Hi, good morning. How are you?" Bradfo, we haven't talked about the pitch clock for a bit on this show, but I saw Kenley Jansen had some issues with it, saying that he feels like pitchers are getting hurt. And I saw that you tweeted about it after he said those comments, saying that he's not the only pitcher that feels that way. Do you think that's a real concern?
Yeah, I think it is. And I thought Kenley was pretty pointed in his comments. And I know everyone else like, "Oh, this is the slowest guy in baseball. He's just making an excuse. He doesn't want the pitch clock." But as I tweeted, like, I've heard this from other pitchers that this is a very real issue. And they've cited how many Tommy John injuries there have been this year, almost as many as you have an entire year in some cases. So I think that the idea that you're going to, like Kenley said, you have a car and you're just totally running it to max levels all the time, you're going to blow out. And he might have a case. We don't know. The problem is we don't know. We haven't been with a pitch clock in a major league setting. I'm not talking about minor leagues. I'm not talking about spring training, but in a major league setting in June, in July, in August. So,
but Rob,
we already have a lot of injuries.
Rob, wouldn't there be a
good point?
Wouldn't there be a big backlog in the minors if this was indeed causing
No,
injuries?
because the point is, Chris, is that I think that what we're seeing is that, and what the players are saying, even the players who went through this in the minors, is that the major leagues is different. The intensity is different. Everything about it is different. And we said this when the pitch clock came in, and I love the pitch clock. Who doesn't love the pitch clock?
Nick Pivetta.
I'm just saying, and I think Kenley's saying the same thing, that this is something that we have to keep an eye on. But when you get to the major leagues in the 8th and 9th inning, there is nothing that we have simulated that in the minor league. The minor leagues isn't about necessarily winning a game that is going to define a guy's livelihood or a team's fortunes when it comes to the business side of baseball. Like, the major leagues is completely different, and that's why I think it's a separator.
So, Bradford, you think that as far as in Major League Baseball, the pitchers are just, because there's more pressure, are just throwing harder versus when they're in the minors, it's more about, it's more about control and it's more about getting your pitches and almost like a practice setting, and that's why you're seeing some of this. And if you are, does this mean that we could potentially see the pitching clock not necessarily go away, but maybe get a little bit longer?
Well, I think that, you put a third deck in a stadium with more people, it amps everything up, number one. And yeah, I think that we're going to have to see if they add, a lot of people have suggested they add 5 seconds to this. And this is the thing, is that people say, a lot of the pitchers will say, well, the recovery time, and it seems like a small deal, but the recovery time when you're going and you're trying to throw as hard as you can, 100 miles an hour all the time with the game on the line, that's going to take a toll if you're just doing it over and over and over again, where you don't have that usual recovery time that you usually have. And I'm just saying, this is what pitchers, the guys who are going through this, are saying and keeping an eye on, and Kenley was just the guy who voiced it.
All right, Bradfo, enjoy California. Enjoy Disney if you make it over there, and we will talk to you again next week.
All right, I'll see you all later.
All right, that is Rob Bradford, who joins us every Tuesday.